Hey guys, it's that time for us to start our automation panel. I'll let everybody introduce themselves, but this is today's automation panel. We'll be running through 11 a.m. And yeah, take it away, Emily.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We haven't even started yet. No clapping. Come on. All right, so my name is Emily. I work for the Home Depot. I'm very happy that Jamf asked me to come here today to moderate this panel on automation. Automation is a pretty broad topic, so we have a lot of things that we could cover. So we'll take a moment to have all of our panelists introduce themselves. And here's what I'll ask them to say. So who you are, what you like to be called, whatever. Your organization or where you're from, whatever you'd prefer to introduce yourself as. If there's a topic that relates to automation that you're particularly passionate or interested about, to let the folks in the room know. That way, if they have questions about that particular topic, they'll have an idea that there's someone on stage that could maybe answer that with a little more detail. And then your favorite cookie flavor. So we'll start with?
How many sessions do we have to deal with here? You get me started talking about automation, it's over with. That's like a week and a half right there. I'm Sal Segoyan. I'm a contractor, independent contractor involved in automation. My focus is usually on user automation rather than administrative automation. And my motto is that I believe that the power of the device should reside in the hands of the one using it. And I used to work for Apple for about 20 years as the product manager for automation technologies there from like 1997 to 2016, so I was fully indoctrinated in the ways of the circle. And now I do fun things involving automation on many different levels. I work with the Omni group on developing a cross-platform scripting technology that they're using. And I also work with Apple on the APU, which was the Apple provisioning utility that was demonstrated yesterday. And a couple other automation projects. I just recently taught a class on AppleScript Objective-C. So
cool.
User automation is my focus. And with that, I will pass it to... Wait. Cookie?
Favorite cookie flavor?
Doctor doesn't let me eat cookies anymore.
When you could, what do you pine for?
Peanut butter. Peanut butter cookie.
That's a good answer. All right.
So, good morning, everybody. I'm Micha van der Bent from the Netherlands. I'm working at the, thank you. I'm working at the Pro Warehouse. I have a great team, and we are an Apple enterprise reseller. So, we are helping customers to succeed with Apple. So, our automation thing is like really broad. It's just like what the customer demands, and we are trying to help them to automate that. So, I got a great team. Armin Briegel's a member of mine, so it's really fun to work with him. So about scripting, bashing, really fun journey. So, and yeah, I eat cookies, but I don't have a flavor, so.
Just any cookies.
Any cookies good.
All right, I am Jason Urey. I'm a solutions consultant for Samanage. We're a multi-tenant SaaS service desk and asset management solution. The biggest thing for me is that it shouldn't be difficult to make your work life easier. So automating as much as you can with your service desk, your service delivery to your end users, your employees. You want to make sure that you get those tasks, the things that you do on a regular basis, automate as much of those as you can, reduce that clutter in your life. So it's the biggest thing for me. And then cookies, I don't really eat cookies, but I would say chocolate chip. If I had to pick one.
That is a good answer. It is a staple cookie flavor.
Deep thinker.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Matt Bauer. I'm with a company called CrowdStrike. We do endpoint security. Work there as a Apple security engineer, so I can answer questions about security or dealing with large numbers of VMs and Mac machines and how to scale up for those. In favorite cookie, I guess, would be vanilla.
Ooh, changing it up. All right, so I guess I have to answer too. So I'm a Mac platform engineer, systems engineer for the Home Depot. I work out of their Austin Technology Center. I'm particularly passionate about automating workflows that enhance the user experience. In particular, being able to automate services that help the user help themselves or help with issues on their Mac. We utilize self-service a lot. We love that self-service model. Home Depot is a DIY company. We love giving the power of fixing things to our Mac users. So that's one of my passions. And as well, that first day open-the-box experience, how can we automate automatic enrollment, or automated enrollment, which I think is the preferred term now, right, besides device enrollment, and make that experience really awesome for Mac users at Home Depot. And in terms of cookies, I am an equal opportunity cookie eater, although I would have to say my favorite is some combination of peanut butter and chocolate. Like most things in life, that's one of the better combinations, in my opinion. All right, cool. So as we get things started, we have some questions that we'll start with to kind of get a conversation going. If any of y'all have questions for our panelists, feel free to come up to one of the mics. I think the mic is here. I think we just have the one. Feel free to come and queue up to the mic, and we will try to get through as many questions as we have from folks in the crowd if you have them. But I think a good general question to start with would be, we kind of talked a little bit about the areas that we're all passionate with automation, but I'm curious to hear from all our panelists, what does automation mean to you in relationship to Mac, iOS, Jamf, management frameworks, et cetera? So if anyone wants to start, it's a broad question. You can really take it anywhere.
So if I can start.
Sure.
If we are going to an enterprise company and we're going to help IT there, so it's going to be, we think we have three things. It must be smooth, simple, and end user first. So simple is the hardest part because you have to think it all, and simple is quite complicated. Smooth, don't do things that you don't need to do. So if you're doing a little bit of scripting, keep it simple. Just like the Jamf scripts, you're going to see like they're really clean, easy to read, and they do what they need to do, nothing else, nothing more. And the end user is also important because we are doing it for the end user. We are not doing it for the IT, we are doing it for the end user. And if we are doing something, we are doing it for ourselves. So it's easy to do it for ourselves if we're going to forget the end user. So keep that in mind. It's the most important thing what we are doing. So
it sounds like, I'm going to make an analogy here. It sounds like for you, automation is kind of like marble. It's smooth on the surface. It can be complex underneath the surface. Yep. And it's aesthetically pleasing to the person that is looking at it or utilizing it in their home.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's what we are doing.
Awesome. Anyone else want to chime in?
I mean, I'll say for us, I mean, you mentioned, self-service. And I think that's a big thing for your service delivery. You know, you're dealing with your employees on a daily basis. They're going in, they're submitting support tickets to you. You've got to get that information up front. But allowing them to self-serve by providing them the resources that they need from a knowledge base, service requests that we have in our system service catalog, but having those processes in place on the back end, but getting that information in front of them quickly is very important because we're all busy people, and if we can cut out some of those things, it's just going to make things much better for us.
Awesome. Sal, did you have something you wanted to share?
I usually develop automation in response to pain. So my solution is always the point of need. Where does the user need assistance in solving some problem? What is the point of need? And trying to figure out how to create an automation that could be deliverable at that point of need so that it doesn't distract from the user's overall theme of what they're doing. They don't have to stop and put their brain off to the side while they're trying to solve this mechanical problem. So point of need is a primary issue when I developed automation technologies. And that's a good one to start with. How about that?
Very.
Yeah, just building on that, for me, automation is a lot about removing friction, being able to do things at a faster speed, maximizing, for us, our endpoint, or our end customers, usually a lot of developers, so being able to, provide them with what they need. If they need, 100 VMs, instantly to do some testing or some other automation or automating, setting up a bunch of new systems for build servers, that's the things that we're looking for, is just to remove that friction.
What I love that I'm hearing is that we're always thinking about an actual person that's going to be impacted by the things that we're trying to make better. It's not just about the technology, it's about the person using it. So that's awesome. So let's see what else we can look through here. So let's say I'm new to the concept of trying to automate workflows in my environment or for my users. Would you all recommend that someone go, or I go in this scenario, to learn more about how to automate, what tools are available, what things I should focus on?
I start again then, no problem.
There's a personality trait there.
No. But nobody wants to step in, but think yourself. No, you need to know your tools, right? There's a lot of tools out there. And there's a certain of easy tools to start with, like Bash. Python is also easy to step up. And look at what Apple is providing you, like Swift, Michael. And, but there's a lot of tools out there that can help you. And not every tool is fit for do it all. So use all those tools where you're going to get. So be arsenal and see the problem and see what's the best solution, how you can solve it. So then you have a knowledge of tool set. So start there.
And part of that is trying not to reinvent the wheel when you don't have to.
Yep.
We're very fortunate to be in an incredible IT community they're like oversharers. If there's something people are working on, you're hearing about it, you're seeing it on Git, you're hearing about it in the Slack channels, it's all over. People want to share to make everyone's lives better. So on top of knowing some of the basic tools, it's also going out there and seeing what people are building so that you can not feel like you have to start from scratch every time. There's a task that you're trying to simplify for yourself, I think is important too. Yeah.
David Sparks and Rosemary Orchard have started a podcast called Automators, and Automation Orchard is a website that backs that up. And it really is a pretty thriving community built upon solving problems. And through there you can find links off to a lot of different resources. I have my own portal website, macosautomation.com, that's linked to like 6 other sites that I maintain. So there's a lot of materials out there, and as was mentioned, there's a lot of things that come built into the operating system that you can take advantage of. If you're doing Apple event stuff, then you have JavaScript and AppleScript and AppleScript Objective-C to talk into frameworks if you want to. So in that environment, you have plenty of solutions. If you're looking at a cross-platform scripting solution, JavaScript is really taking on now with the introduction of its use by the Omni group and the Drafts app, and a lot of people on iOS now are exposing their application object models to JavaScript. So learning that and putting that in your quiver helps too as well. And then there's some basic tools you can work with that are incremental, where you create automation recipes. On the Mac, there's Automator, and then there's Siri shortcuts on iOS, where you're basically saying, okay, cut the carrots, cut the celery, cut the onions, mix together in a mirepoix and serve, right? That type of strategy is a great way to introduce somebody into the concept of automation without getting into the nitty-gritty of something like a Python. So there's many different levels and many approaches to automation, and all of them are valid. It's what solves your problem at your point of need.
Totally. Anything else to add?
We usually start our automation. We're already using some tools that's something is usually provided by a vendor or something like that. We've relied on the vendor a lot when we tell them our problems and ask them, if they have any tools. We've been surprised the number of times they've given us an internal tool that they use, since they use their tool all the time in their product. They usually have a lot of automation internal, and sometimes they'll be willing to share. We've saved a lot of time by just asking the vendor, what do you do? How do you solve this problem? And then taking the tools and automation that they've built and incorporating it into our workflows.
I mean, I agree. I mean, as a vendor myself, we have resources internally to provide that support for our customers. It's like we have documentation, we have resources that can get on the phone and help you build out what what you need as far as workflows and automations in the system. So you got to lean pretty heavily on those vendors to get you that information. So.
Yeah, and to bring back around to some of the points I brought up at the top of the question is don't forget about the strength of our community and not being afraid to ask questions to see if there's stuff out there already that maybe that is hard to find or is new, or that maybe there hasn't been a panel talk or a meetup session about it yet that you may not have heard about. One takeaway tip I will give y'all, so that you're like, I can go and try and look up this thing afterwards, is that GitHub.com has a feature called Topics, and any good repo maintainer will tag topics on their repo. And a lot of really great projects out there, like AutoPackage, like install macOS.py, which comes from the monkey part of our world, right? Like some of the tools that Eric Gomez has been building for automation for some of his purposes will have macOS as a topic. And you can search GitHub based on topic, and you'll get a list of repos and projects that are specific to macOS that are on GitHub that are open source for you to check out. So if there's somewhere you want to go and be like, what are other people building that maybe will help me or give me some ideas about things that I can work on, check out the macOS topic or Jamf topics in GitHub, and you can get a list of what's out there. Cool. All right, so we have a question, so come on up.
What's the best approach to update automation when something like the mysterious T2 chip comes along? I find myself, is it better to adapt your current workflow or just nuke and pave, start fresh, and build something? Because I've realized some of it works with our T2 fleet that we're rolling out now, but some of it's like just doesn't work at all. How do you guys handle a situation something like that?
Yeah. So did everyone hear the question okay? Perfect. So topic of T2 and the implications, particularly of provisioning, I would imagine
correct.
is what the question is about. So I'll open it up to the panelists first. Any opinions on T2 chips and provisioning? Misha's like, I will not start this time.
I think that's a Sal question.
Not touching that one.
It's clear to me that Apple has been putting a lot of thought into how new Mac hardware out of the box is set up for an organization. And they're trying to keep that process as secure as possible for the organizations that are purchasing those devices, right? So they want to make sure that people aren't just nuking and causing potentially security issues with ways that they're building the operating system on top of their hardware. Right? It's tricky because imaging was such a part of the Mac admin culture for so long, and now we have to try to find ways to get the machines in the state that we want. I'm sorry, the Macs in the state that we want. Apple doesn't like you calling them machine or device. They're Macs, right? They're a MacBook, they're a Mac. To get them in a state that works for your organization but also follows Apple's security model. I don't know if there's a really good, easy answer to that question. If you were using one workflow and now you're finding that it doesn't work anymore, besides, well, maybe it is time to order a new Mac and see how close I can get to what I want with what Apple is allowing me to do with this new hardware, which can be a bit of a bummer when you've got a comfortable workflow that your organization uses. But Apple's going to do what Apple wants to do. So we kind of put ourselves in a position where we have to try to make the best of it. Does anyone have any tactical advice that they could provide on that kind of topic?
Just to add to it, yeah, it's causing us to redo our whole workflow. So we started over from scratch, and currently we're starting over from scratch on the process of how to do it with their fleet of actual physical machines for testing. And the verdict's still out on how we're going to do it. But we're trying to use as many Apple tools as we can to make that happen, just knowing that that's the direction.
Yeah, and I think Apple really wants automated enrollment to be the future for organizations. So if you're not already enrolled in Apple Business Manager and have device enrollment and automated enrollment as part of your portal, as part of your organizational Apple ecosystem, it's as good a time as any to try to get that sorted out and hunt down all your DUNS numbers and your contact information and all the businessy stuff that Apple wants from you. But for particular ways to map, I found that when I found myself in a position at a previous organization where we were doing imaging, and we wanted to try to switch to DEP, or I'm sorry, automated enrollment. We'll all learn eventually what we're supposed to call these programs now. What was my image trying to accomplish, and then how do I break those pieces out and make them into policies that can run when an enrollment happens? Like, how do I take my big chunk and make it little chunks so that I make it a little bit more modular for that provisioning process? And that varies organization to organization depending on what you need to do. But I have a feeling that there are people in the room besides the panelists that probably have suggestions or opinions about what that process looks like. And we'll be hanging around after the session to answer some of those more specific questions, that kind of stuff. Hopefully
Thanks,
that helps
guys.
a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, feel free to come up if you have any other questions about topics we've come up or anything else automation related that you would like us to cover. If not, I'm just going to keep going down this list that I have here. So we kind of touched on the second subject, which is open source or software as a service tools to help automate workflows and Mac management. We kind of led ourselves to that already. Are there any other tools that y'all can think of, open source or otherwise, that you would like to recommend to folks to look into specifically to help with automation tasks and workflows that they're trying to accomplish?
I know as part of our service desk, and part of the workflows with a service request that's coming in, we integrate with Zapier. So that's one of the ones that we would use to kind of kick off something else in maybe another system. So, your request comes in from your employee to get a new laptop, and you can use, webhooks through application integrations through Zapier to, maybe kick off something else in another system. So that's one of the tools that we would recommend.
If you're not familiar, Zapier is spelled Z-A-P-I-E-R, and it's specifically an automation tool where you say, I have this tool, and then I have this tool. And then when this tool gets something incoming, I want you to do this with the other tool. It's pretty handy. It's not a free service, but I think you can set up accounts where you have a limited amount of zaps you can do a day if you want to see if that will work for whatever workflow you're investigating. Zapier is a cool tool. Any other particular tools, open source or otherwise, that y'all would recommend to the folks in the room? If you come to the next panel in this session, which is called Fall, Spring, and Everything in Between, I'll be talking about VM building for testing MDM and device enrollment workflows, and I'll be talking about some open source and paid tools to do that. So I will tease that. Stick around and you'll hear some more about some of that stuff. For me, I think the most obvious automation tool that everybody should have in their arsenal, in my opinion, if you're a Mac administrator and you do anything with deployment, is AutoPackage. It is the best. There are recipes for so many packages so that you don't have to take the time to build software to deploy. It does it for you automatically. There are even additional tools that you can use with AutoPackage like JSS Importer that will not only build your package, but it'll also import it into your JSS for you or your JPS so that the package is already in your distribution point ready for you to test with it. So look up AutoPackage. Make sure you're familiar with that if you're not already. That'll be my recommendation. Cool. All right, let's keep looking. This one's kind of specific to Jamf. A question about, I think about this a lot, about extension attributes. So do we have any opinions about extension attributes? And if we think that there's any work being done, we can speculate, or maybe, uh-oh, Ross is coming up. All right, we'll go through this first, and then we'll get a Ross question. Help make extension attributes more secure and more scalable. Is that something that anyone can speak to? I have some ideas if you don't.
I only have a thing about the security, because every script that's pushed out by Jamf is done by root, right? And I have a thought about that, because not always you need to have root access. I have a lot of scripts in there that says, like, I'm the logged-in user, then I run as a logged-in user. So maybe from a security perspective, I want to see, like, can I activate this one as root or this one not? So there's more security way there, even for the admins. Some admins are juniors. They're just hitting scripts to the machines, and they're doing root access, right? For example, a wallpaper. So I found a command for wallpaper, but it didn't change. Yeah, but your root has the proper wallpaper, not the end user.
Yeah, sign in
So-
as root, and the wallpaper will be fantastic.
So there's going to be a benefit in there. And I know there's script errors, then you have to run as a normal user and then finish it as a root user. But yeah, there can be benefits of it. So my thoughts about the extension at root. So.
Yeah. I had a bit of an epiphany when I was listening to Sergio's talk on Tuesday about state management in the era of MDM, and how he mentioned ways to have a local file that helps manage that state that you want the device to be. And then if the state changes, that something local will help that device then go back to Jamf and get back in compliance or run whatever policies might need it. Something that I thought might be interesting for extension attributes, because as it stands right now, when you put an extension attribute in Jamf, it applies to all Macs or all devices, right, that are checking in. It's really easy to update an extension attribute with the API, with like a one-liner, to just put data back up into that device record without requiring a full recon or without requiring all of your devices run that extension attribute script around the same time on a recon. So something like having a launch daemon that is looking at a change for a file. And if that change happens, it runs a script which then says, hey, here's the new value I care about, and then uses the API to update the extension attribute on the device. And that way it's like local to devices that you care about that thing. Because maybe only in IT and your developers do you care if they go in and uninstall a security agent that you care about. And you don't want to wait 24 hours for Jamf's recon to find out that that happened. So maybe there are some ways to localize things like extension attributes on the devices so that you get that information faster and more unique to that device without waiting for those cycles of recons. Just like one idea that came to me the other day. If there's no other answers to that one, we can shoot it over to Ross. Ross.
Hi, good morning. What kind of tools do you guys utilize for building your automation and testing it, be it like Sublime as your text editor or PAW for your API generation? Are there any tools that you really like using for that?
Let's talk tools about, it can be anything from a script or a text editor to if you build virtual machines for testing, or if you have some kind of automated workflow to get a physical machine in a state that you need for testing, what are some tools that you use to help automate? Is that a good summary? Okay, cool.
I use a lot BB Edit. I love it. So.
BB Edit?
I live in BB Edit. It is everything. It's shopping lists to very complex code. I have scripts that control it and drive it like crazy. Depending on what I need it to do, it becomes whatever tool I need. It's absolutely amazing application.
Cool. Jason, Matt?
Heartily agree.
We do a lot of our automation in C or Swift. So we're in Xcode a lot of times for the tools that we need for a lot of the integration into like VMware or ESXi or those kinds of things. So we live in there quite a bit. And then sometimes wrap it around with some Python will be the other scripting language you use. But with Swift, we're trying to move more stuff just to Swift. That way we're all in one language.
Cool. Yeah. For me, text editor is Atom. I use the Atom Packet Manager a lot to add a lot of custom plugins. Like you can add a shell linter or a py linter so that your code is being checked by a shell check or a linter for Python automatically as you're writing to help hedge off any like issues in your code. Like if you're me and you ham-fist things all the time when you're typing because you're kind of dyslexic, like tools like that are great for that. Like, oh, that variable doesn't exist anymore. Man, if I put that in Jamf already, like it totally wouldn't be working, but it catches that stuff for me right away. We use VMware Fusion a lot for building VMs. That's part of what I'm talking about in the next panel, if you want to stick around and hear about it. Tools like install macOS.py for building installer images. vFuse for automating building the VMs, which is another thing I'll be talking about at the next session in this room. Stuff like that I rely on a lot. And we do use Xcode a lot as well because we have a Swift application that we use during enrollment that we need to work on and keep up to date and make sure it supports dark mode on day 0 for Mojave, which it did. We were really impressed with ourselves. I don't think anyone else cared. We were like, we are dark mode ready with our enrollment app. You're welcome, developers, because the developers are the people that cared. Any other tools that come to mind? Cool. And it seems like the languages that keep coming up are Bash, Python, some C and JavaScript, and Swift seems to be the languages of choice up on the panel. If I'm interpreting
Thank you.
correctly. Yeah, you're welcome. Cool.
I think it's also, I mean, we're talking about things from the administrator point of view. And I think part of the role of an administrator is also to provide the end user with tools, automation tools. Automation's a huge word that encompasses many different things. So like, what kind of automations do you supply to the end user so that they can take advantage of them? For example, during my time at Apple, you know, I would go around to various groups and I would just stand there for an afternoon and watch and find the pain points. You know, what are they trying to accomplish in their workflow, and where are the bottlenecks, and where are the points that they're failing or slowing down? And I'd write a set of tools that they could install maybe in the script menu or assign to keys or run as automator services or whatever, and to speed up their whole overall thing. And I think it's part of the job of somebody that's administering the computer to also provide them with those kind of tools as well. And that's a different focus on automation. That's a user automation.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things, for example, for that is one of the teams was tasked with converting data from spreadsheets into charts and keynotes for presentations to executives. And that became a very simple process because of scripting. It was a simple short script, but for them that was 15 minutes per chart. In a presentation that had 250 charts, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
So when you design the setup for that machine, do you also think about installing those packages as well, so that the user has those automations at hand at the point of need? That's another concept about it.
Yeah, another set of tools that is worth talking about is the tools that you use for communication at your organization. We utilize Slack heavily, not just for cat gifts, which is largely my contribution to our Slack team, but also we use Slack polls. We ask questions and have people give us a react sheet for how you feel about this thing that you ran into, or just watching the Mac users channel and seeing what's coming up that day. Ooh, a lot of people are having networking issues today. That must be a pain point. What can we do to go back and see if there's some way to give them something they can do to getting back on our enterprise network a little easier? So don't forget that getting information from your users, which is kind of what you mentioned, right, is seeing those user pain points. Go talk to your users and survey them, and use SurveyMonkey or use Slack polls or whatever thing you've got available at your organization to poll your users periodically and see what they see as pain points with their devices, and that'll give you a starting point for working on things to make it better for them. So don't forget that your users are your best asset, so get information from them. Hi.
Morning. This is more about user automation rather than admin automation, mainly directed at Sal. I heard you plug Siri shortcuts a little while ago, and as the father of automation, I'm sure I'm not the only one here wondering what crazy Siri shortcuts you have. Do you have any favorites that you can maybe speak to and inspire the rest of us?
Siri shortcuts, do you have any that you like to use? Any like particularly crazy ones that you're really impressed with that you built for yourself?
I'm not a good example for that because at Apple I had 14 computers and none of them worked. And I had, you know, various stages of development on each computer. Like this would be an alpha build of something, and this was a prototype running a beta build of that. And usually when I work, I have a bunch of iOS devices on a Bradford D20, but it's rare when I actually get to set them up for personal use. And I will run certain Siri shortcuts as a way of testing things and doing things. One of my most fun integrations with Siri shortcuts is through the Omni Automation. Omni has created a cross-platform JavaScript implementation based on core JavaScript that's in WebKit, and they expose the object model of their applications to it. So they've also included the ability to from their own internal scripting to send a message out to Siri shortcuts and retrieve the results. So I just had fun the other day creating, I was in OmniGraffle and I had a box here, and I created an instant Siri shortcut that would translate what was in the box and then assign it to a voice. So I could be working on a layout and I go, show this to me in French, boof, and it would do that. So the potential's huge. I'm really excited about what they've done with Siri shortcuts and what that enables. I think it's an evolutionary process, and it's going to get smoother and more powerful with each different release. But it's definitely pointing to the fact that I think the end user customer has spoken. That's the #1 feature of iOS. That is definitely the #1 feature of iOS is Siri shortcuts. Because everybody wants to have the power to control their device. They want to be able to have that. And as an administrator, your job's to not only provide them with a great machine and a great setup, but also to enable them to customize it through their own needs to make themselves productive. The power of the computer should reside in the hands of the one using it, and I think Siri shortcuts is the future for that on iOS.
Thanks.
I apparently have two. I have Apple Music to SongLink because I have a hell of a time sharing links to songs in Apple Music with people, and so I found a shortcut that generates a link that you can actually copy and paste and share with people. And I have Scan UPC to List, so that when I'm shopping, I can scan a UPC at the store and it'll generate a list of all of the items that I scanned, which is pretty handy. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do with Siri shortcuts. I know at some point earlier, and I'll see if I can find the link and I'll post it on Slack or something later, that someone had a website that they set together where you can click to add a bunch of totally weird, crazy, awesome Siri shortcut automated workflows for things like, if you listen to this specific song on Spotify, it'll copy the link, it'll go to this other place, it'll share it there, and then it'll see if you have a copy in your Apple Music library. Like, it's like this complex workflow with a few steps to like do crazy things. I'll see if I can find that. There's some cool stuff that people put together for Siri shortcuts on iOS. Cool. We have another question.
Hi there. So the automation is kind of thing I end up doing outside my regular role. So my question is, what can I tell my bosses to make automation my role? Like
or to like
to convince
making
them.
automation a priority of something to work on in your role at your organization?
Yes.
Yeah. How much do they pay you and how much time does it take? And here's the amount of money you're paying me just to do this one thing over and over again. Where if you gave me half a day to automate this thing, you're getting that money back from me to do other things for the organization, is one thing you can try. They love, upper management loves numbers and they love money. So that's one thing. Any other recommendations from folks on the panel?
I don't bother. Just see me afterwards and give me your email. We're always hiring. There's good demand, right? There's not a lot of, we're all here, but there's a big demand for, Mac and Apple professionals, so there's a strong market out there.
I think from a management standpoint, it's all about the cost. So if you can boil it down to that, it's like how much does it cost to do this on a, I do this one task and I'd have to do it every single day, and it's like how much time am I spending? How much does that cost the company? If I can automate it, I can spend a little bit of time doing that, and I don't have to do that anymore. I've just saved the company money. I've got, so automating that and getting that, dollar amount in front of them, their eyes are going to light up for that. So.
You can also say, look, I love being able to do all this myself. We may have to add more headcount if I don't get some time to automate some of these tasks that I keep having to do. And maybe the threat of hiring more people will give them your management the motivation they need to give you some space to automate stuff.
I've seen this same story over and over and over again, decades. Guys will automate the processes that they do at their company, and then they'll leave the company, and the company will hire them back as a contractor at triple their salary. So don't even ask them. Just go ahead and automate it till they become dependent on you, and then leave.
Thank you.
That is some real talk right there. Thank you. All right, another question. Hey.
So this may be a little counter to that last point, but this isn't so much a question, more of a statement and a heads up. Like, just always, I would recommend, you're in the thick of it, you're making your automation, you're always, in that moment, you're thinking about it and you know what you're doing, but 4 months down the road, you're 10 steps away because you're looking at something else, working on something else. For yourself, for your colleagues, document everything, comment everything humanly possible, because you're not going to remember it 4 months from down the road.
Yeah. Documentation is huge. Yeah. For sure. And if your company doesn't have an internal documentation tool, maybe you can convince them to get you GitHub or GitLab or something where you can use wiki-style documentation that you can keep internally or whatever, so that you at least have something somewhere centralized that's accessible by you and your organization going forward, that isn't like in your OneDrive that'll disappear when you leave the company or whatever, that your information will be able to be shared forward no matter what happens at your organization or your career path. Any other tips on that? That's a good point to bring up.
No, just adding to that, I mean, we treat our automation code as production code, right? So it's not code that we actually release to customers, but it's necessary for us to do our jobs to actually get to that end product. So we treat that automation code as production code. It's version controlled and pull requests and code peer reviewed, all for those reasons. And that really helps keep everyone aware of what's going on, helps with the documentation side of it as well.
And time is also an issue, so if you don't get the time for documentation, read what you are doing in your own script. Because I recognize that you are doing it now, and after 3 or 4 months you'll say, what I'm doing here? You're supporting yourself then, not the problem. But write down in your script what you are doing, what the function is.
Yeah,
so
documentation is like automation of information for your future self. If I do it this way at this point, I don't have to do it again later, right? So you're already like saving yourself some time and making things easier for yourself, right? So documentation is definitely worth bringing up in a panel about automation and some of the stuff that we've been talking about. All right, so we have 3 minutes. Any other questions from the crowd, or we can just kind of open it up with any leaving comments? All right, cool. Come on down.
Since it's a Jamf conference,
yeah,
are you guys doing anything in particular cool in self-service to automate things for your end users? I know we just started doing the whole easy button to rewipe, saving a ton of time instead of going into the recovery partition. Is there anything that y'all are doing?
I'll open up to the panelists first. Any cool things you're doing with self-service or otherwise with Jamf to automate processes that you think are cool to share?
Restart button. That's cool. That solves everything, so.
An easy reboot in self-service can help sometimes, yeah. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No. I guess the one thing we're doing is trying to use profiles as much as we can to deal with our development and dog fooding and other things, so we can move machines from one state to another state as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And using Jamf as much as we can to make that happen.
Yeah. I know for us, we're a large organization. We have a complex networking stack, so we've got some custom scripts in self-service to help users get their machine back in a state, their Mac, sorry, back in the state to get on our enterprise network again, so that they don't feel like they have to go to the workbench every time, which is our internal like JNUC bar, to get help getting back on our network if they fall off for some reason. Stuff like, and that script also includes a lot of steps, including rebinding for the machine certificate that it needs, without having to split up a bunch of those steps separately. And you need to do this, and then do this, and then they do. So now we try to make it all one policy for them. It's a one-click, we'll get you back on your network kind of thing. Other stuff that we do, we try anything, anytime we see a trend of, we had a bunch of people come in and ask about this. We even have a dashboard that was built by one of our teams through Tableau that shows us trending topics for Mac platform tickets that come in and the last 10 or 20 issues, so that we can see if there are trends and things that people are running into and having problems with or questions about, and then we identify those as things we should go after. So we either put policies in self-service or improve in provisioning workflows and things like that to try to ease some of that burden off of our support folks. I know that's a little vague, but that may be a helpful tip, and I know we've got someone from a ticketing ITSM service that just having visibility overviews into the tickets that are coming in for your support staff, especially if you're not that multi-role person that does support and administration. If you are an engineer and you're not working with end users, maybe some tips on getting information from tickets from users, getting user information as we round things out. I know we're at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to see when you've got those things coming in, like anomaly detection, you know, for a lot of issues that are very similar in nature. So some of the stuff that we're doing at Samanage is some AI and machine learning to analyze those tickets on a regular basis so that you're getting those trend reports on what's going on. And if you start to see a spike in certain types of tickets, it's going to go ahead and get you in front of that, which is going to save you time in the end. I mean, if you get in front of something after, you know, you see it, you know, in 30 minutes versus it's 2 days later, you know, you've just saved yourself a lot of time. So a lot of that AI is running to help get that in front of you.
So we covered some great topics that were pretty broad, and hopefully you have some takeaways of things you can think about and go after with your organization after JNUC ends. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you to Sal, Misha, Jason, and Matt for joining us up on the stage this morning. We'll hang around a little bit if you have some additional questions that you'd like to ask us. And the next session, I will also be on talking about preparedness for new operating system releases and features. So stick around if you'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.